Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Harling. I'm here again for day two to talk about fractions. I put on the board what we talked about on Monday, just real quick as a review. We talked about what fractions are. We know that a fraction is part of a whole number, and we showed an example of that with this fraction. Everybody say 1/2, okay? And then we showed a fraction circle as a model to represent that fraction. So we shaded in one part of the two equal parts because we know also with fractions, when we divide them into parts, each part has to be the same. It has to be equal. Very good. And then we talked about some of the vocabulary that we learned for fractions. We know that this top number is called the numerator. We know that the numerator tells us how many parts of the whole has been shaded. And then we talked about the bottom number, which is called the denominator, and that tells us how many equal parts there are in the whole. So for this picture, it's only two parts, and one part has been shaded from the whole. So briefly, that's what we talked about yesterday, or Monday, excuse me. And now today what I want to do is talk more about fractions and using them on a number line, something that we did talk about in school. So before I get started, I wanted to talk about again how we know that fractions are only part of a whole number. Here's a good example that I showed you in school. We talked about a number line. We know that number lines, basically from first, second grade, even third grade, can be used to help us add numbers, subtract numbers, just moving across the number line or counting backwards on the number line to help us. These are whole numbers. They start at 1 and it ends all the way at 30. And these are very useful tools that we can use when we're adding and subtracting whole numbers, right? But I did say to you that now that we're learning fractions, we have to understand that fractions are numbers that come between whole numbers, and they are smaller, and they are not whole numbers, but they are numbers that show part of a whole that are between whole numbers. Another example of that would be using a measuring tape, okay? I can see here on the measuring tape that there's lines between the whole numbers that tell me those are fractions. And I would use this useful tool if I was measuring something in my home. Like, for example, if Miss Harling wanted to put blinds up in her windows, I would use the measuring tape to help me figure out the exact measurement of what type of blinds I need to buy. Maybe they're 30 inches long, maybe they're 30 and a half inches long. Whatever the case may be, I know that I can use this measuring tape because it will give me the exact amount that I need to measure. And usually it always comes down to a whole number and maybe part of a fraction that gives me the total length maybe of a window before I buy my blinds to put up blinds in my window. You know, I would not be using this number line to help me because it doesn't have any fractions in between the whole numbers to help me find the exact amount. So again, that's what we're talking about, and what I'm going to do today is number lines and using a fraction on a number line, and we're going to plot fractions on a number line so that we can see exactly where the fraction should be located. So before I get started, I'm going to ask you to get a piece of paper, pen, pencil, crayon, whatever you have at home like we did on Monday. And while you're doing that, I'm going to erase the board so I can give you a few seconds to find what you need, okay? And we use these socks in school. I know you've used them with Mrs. Radon during reading, and sometimes I had little erasers in the classroom, but if you had a sock, you could use it. So I have my dirty sock. Okay, you guys ready? All right, perfect. So what I'm going to do is draw a horizontal line on my board, and with your pencil, crayon, whatever you're using, I'd like you to do the same, okay? So there's my horizontal line with my arrows at the end. And before we get started plotting fractions on a number line, what number should we begin with on our number line? Tell somebody at home. If you guys said 0, you're right, because we know that we must always begin a number line with 0. We learned that too when we were doing multiplication and we were doing learning jumps on a number line when we were multiplying and showing equal groups. Well, the same applies for fractions. When you're using a number line, you must start with 0. And then the only other number, whole number, that we need to put on this number line is what? Tell somebody at home. You are correct. We have to put a 1 at the end of the number line. That 1, we know, is a whole number. And everything that comes between 0 and 1 are fractions. All right? Because they're smaller than whole numbers. So I thought I'd make it a little fun. And what I'm going to do is use one of my dice. And I'm going to try to roll it and then come up with the denominator so that we know how many total equal parts we need to put on this number line. So I'm going to roll it, and hopefully I'll roll a big number. It doesn't matter though, but I don't want to roll 1. But I'm going to roll it, and then that is going to be our denominator. Roll. Okay. I rolled the number, what? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'm going to take my number line and I'm going to divide it into fifths. I'd like you to do this with me, okay? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that equals 5. Remember, we talked about that. At the end of the number line is the denominator that you used to break the whole number line into. And we broke it into fifths. So now we know that the number line has been broken into 5 equal parts. Best you can. All right, so I'm just going to put fifths up here because that's what we divided it into. Now, we talked about the unit fractions on Monday, remember? So what I'm going to do at the top of this number line before I do any plotting is I am going to make fraction strips to represent each unit on the number line for fifths. I'd like you to do it with me. So from here to here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 1/5. This would be another 1/5. We're showing each unit at a time. This would be another 1/5, which so far, how many do I have so far? 3/5. Very good. This would be another 1/5. And this is my last one. 1/5. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a point somewhere on this number line, and I'd like you to tell me the fraction that that point represents. We know we have our fraction strips up here. Each part of the number line has been divided into fifths, so that's why we use a unit fraction for each one. But now I want you to tell me, after I plot the dot or the point on the number line, I want you to tell me what fraction that represents. So I'm going to take this time a blue marker and I'm going to put a point here. Everybody see that? So with someone at home or just by yourself, take your finger and you should be able to count the strips across, and you have to stop where the point is and tell me, do not count after the point, tell me what fraction would you plot there so you know what fraction it represents on the number line. Go. All right, if you guys counted, I'm going to count 2, and let's see what fraction we come up with. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. So, at the point, I plotted the fraction 4/5. Everybody say that. 4/5. Very good. So, now I know where 4/5 belong on this number line. First, I divided it into 5 equal parts. Next, I showed my fraction strips as unit fractions to represent each equal part on the number line. Then I put a point on the number line and I asked you to plot where the fraction for that point would go, or what fraction would go at that point. And you counted your strips across and you stopped at 4/5. All right, awesome. I'm going to do one more and then we're done for today. So if you have an old sack, paper towel, a tissue, something, you can erase. Well, you probably don't even have an erase board, but you can use your pencil and erase if you used a pencil. If you didn't, just go below it so you can draw another number line. All right, so we're going to draw another one horizontally across. I'm going to begin with 0 and I'm going to end with 1. And I'm going to get rid of the word fits. And now I'm going to roll my dice again to see what number I come up with. Hopefully it's not 5 again. If it is, I'm going to roll again. What number did I come up with? 2. 2 represents what? Halves. Everybody say halves. Okay, I'm going to write halves up here. And then I am going to divide my number line into half. So that should be pretty easy. This is 0. This is 1. And that's 2, because I have to divide it into how many parts? 2. So this is 0, 1, 2. I'm done. Now, I'm going to put a dot or a point right here. And I would like for you to plot on the number line what fraction that point represents. You ready? What does that represent? Okay, my friends, if you said 1/2, you are correct. You can look at that number line and tell that's a half. Oops, and what did Ms. Harling forget to do? I forgot to make the what? The fraction strips at the top. So I'm going to do that as well. That's 1/2. And that's 1/2. Very good. But again, this one should have been easy because you have a whole line here and I put a dot directly in the middle. So you know that that represents a half. And that kind of remind you of the picture we did in the beginning of this video when I showed the circle and half of it was shaded. So there's your 1/2. All right, my friends. That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to be doing some more fractions with you this week. I think I'm going to do another video tomorrow, and then I'm going to do another one on Friday, okay? So that I can continue doing the fractions with you. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I hope that you were able to watch the video, and I hope that this reminds you of some of the things that we did in class, just to kind of keep you refreshed on what we've been doing and what we learned so you don't forget it now that you're at home. Again, stay safe, be healthy. I'm looking out the window. It's beautiful out today. I hope that you can get out and get some fresh air, but please keep social distancing with your friends if you see them out also, because it's nice out. You really can't be around people, and you have to, at least keep a 6-foot distance between you and your friends. But I do hope you do get to go outside and enjoy some fresh air, because I'm going to do that today too. Okay, miss you. See you tomorrow. Bye.